My son once looked me straight in the eye and said, "The wedding already happened last week. Only important people were invited." And he said it while I was still smiling into the phone, asking what time the ceremony would begin tomorrow. That single moment split something inside me, quietly, invisibly, like the soundless shatter of thin glass. I hung up pretending my voice was steady, but inside I felt the kind of humiliation only a parent knows, the kind that comes when your own child decides you no longer matter. I told myself I'd swallow it, like I always did. But life has a way of revealing who people really are. A month later he called again, cheerful this time, almost demanding, saying his wife wanted to use my lake house for a weekend getaway. Just like that. Like nothing had happened. Like I was a resource, not a person. I remembered his words. Important people. For the first time, I let that truth settle. I said, "No. It's only for important people." Then I turned off my phone. The silence that followed did something extraordinary. Within hours, the calls began, one after another, until the screen showed 56 missed calls, each more frantic than the last. They thought I'd bend. They thought I'd forgive quickly. They thought I'd stay small, the way they preferred. They were wrong. And what happened next is the reason you'll want to stay with me until the very end. Because this time, the one they underestimated finally had a plan. My name is Raymond Clark. I'm 68 years old, a retired accountant who spent 40 years helping small business owners make sense of their numbers. My wife Eleanor passed away 2 years ago, and ever since, I've lived alone in the house we shared for 4 decades, watering her roses every morning, talking to her photograph every night. The day my world cracked open began like any ordinary Thursday. I woke at 6, made coffee in the old percolator Eleanor insisted we keep, and sat at the kitchen table watching the sunrise paint the backyard gold. I had been looking forward to this Thursday for months. Andrew, my son, was getting married on Saturday. I had spent weeks preparing. The new suit hung in my closet, charcoal gray with a soft pinstripe Eleanor would have loved. I'd written a toast, revised it 11 times, practiced it until I could say it without my voice breaking. I even bought a card with extra space inside, hoping to write something meaningful to my new daughter-in-law. That morning, I decided to call Andrew, to confirm the details. What time should I arrive? Did he need help? A father wants to be useful on his son's wedding day, even if the bride's family takes over most of the planning. I dialed his number with a smile, the kind I hadn't worn since Eleanor's funeral. He answered on the 4th ring. His voice sounded wrong from the first word, flat, distant, like he was reading lines he didn't believe. "Hey, Dad. What's up?" "I'm calling about Saturday," I said, still smiling, still foolish. "I wanted to be sure I have the time right. The invitation said 2 o'clock, but I wasn't sure if I should arrive earlier for—" "Dad," he cut in. And something cold curled into my spine. "The wedding was last Saturday." At first, the words didn't make sense. They entered my ears but refused to assemble into meaning. "What do you mean?" "We got married last week. It's done." "But the invitation said—" "We only invited people who mattered." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. In that terrible quiet, I heard another noise, soft, deliberate, unmistakable. Lydia's laugh. She was there. Listening. Wanting me to hear her. "Andrew." My voice barely existed. "I'm your father. I have to go, Dad. Lydia needs me." The line went dead. I sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours without moving. The coffee went cold. The sun climbed higher. Eleanor's photograph watched me from the mantel, her smile frozen in a time when our family still made sense. There had to be a mistake. There had to be. I searched through every piece of mail from the last month, every envelope, every flyer, every bill. No wedding invitation? There had never been one. I called Andrew back, 7 times. Voicemail. I texted him, 3 messages, each more desperate. No reply. By late afternoon, I finally understood. My son had gotten married without me. Not because of an oversight. not because of a postal error, but because he'd chosen to exclude me. Or rather, someone had chosen for him. That evening, I sat in Eleanor's chair, the one she claimed every night for 38 years. Her belongings still filled the drawer beside it, untouched since the day she died. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Some wounds need distance before they can be examined. The doorbell never rang. There was no knock. But when I went to lock up for the night, I found something on the welcome mat. A white envelope. Crisp. Elegant. My name written in calligraphy. Inside was a wedding invitation, complete with venue, time, and date. Last Saturday at 2 o'clock. No postmark. Someone had delivered it by hand. 1 week too late. I stood in the doorway holding that invitation, and for the first time since Eleanor died, I felt something besides grief. It began as a spark, small, sharp, unfamiliar, burning in my chest. Someone was playing a cruel game. And they had just made a terrible mistake. I didn't sleep. The invitation sat on the kitchen table like an accusation, its elegant script mocking me with details of a celebration I had been intentionally erased from. By dawn, I knew I needed to leave the house. These walls no longer felt safe. They felt like they were closing in. I needed to go somewhere untouched by the poison that had seeped into my family. Somewhere Eleanor still existed. So I drove to the lake house. The cabin sits 3 hours north, beside a lake so still it mirrors the sky like polished glass. Eleanor and I built it together 40 years ago, when Andrew was a toddler and our dreams stretched wide and bright. We hauled lumber, argued over paint colors, celebrated finished rooms with cheap wine and cheaper pizza. Every beam holds a memory. Every floorboard knows our laughter. When Eleanor got sick, she made me promise to keep the place exactly the same. Don't let anyone change it, Raymond. That cabin is where our love lives. Protect it. I hadn't been back since her funeral. The grief had been too sharp. But now, with my son's betrayal burning a hole through my chest, I needed her. The drive was quiet, just the hum of the engine and my thoughts. Andrew's words replayed in my mind. We only invited people who mattered. When had I stopped mattering? When had Lydia convinced him that his father was disposable? Even thinking her name made my jaw tighten. I remembered the night Andrew first brought her home. She was polished, charming, the kind of woman who made everyone feel special while calculating their value behind a practiced smile. Eleanor saw it immediately. There's something cold behind those eyes, she whispered afterward. Watch her, Raymond. Carefully. I dismissed it. I wanted Andrew to be happy. I wanted a growing family, grandchildren, holidays, warmth. Hope is easier than truth. But Eleanor, she had been right. She was always right. I reached the lake house just before noon. The cabin looked exactly the same, weathered wood, wide windows facing the water. I stood on the porch breathing in the pine-filled air, letting the silence steady me. Inside, dust motes drifted through streams of sunlight. The furniture sat frozen in time, waiting for a family that would never return in the same way. I walked through each room slowly, touching objects like sacred relics. The kitchen where Eleanor made blueberry pancakes. The living room where we played cards every Friday night. The bedroom where we held each other through storms and whispered about growing old together. Grief came in waves, but underneath it rode something else, unexpected comfort. Eleanor was here. Not in body but in essence, her presence saturated every corner of the cabin. That comfort steadied me, and I remembered something I had brought with me, Eleanor's personal box. It had sat untouched in my closet for 2 years. I hadn't been able to face it after she died. Sorting the fragments of our life felt like opening a wound. Yet, for some reason, the cabin gave me courage I could not find at home. Perhaps her presence here made the task feel less like an ending. I set the box on the kitchen table and lifted the lid with trembling hands. Inside were the relics of a lifetime, old letters exchanged during long trips, photographs from our honeymoon and anniversaries, Andrew's small milestones, a pressed flower from our first date, a tiny envelope holding a lock of Andrew's baby hair. Each item carried decades of love, I handled them like sacred objects. Near the bottom I found something I hadn't expected, an envelope, sealed and white, my name written in Eleanor's careful hand. The date in the corner made my heart stall. She had written it 3 months before she died. I turned it over, fingertips on the seal, and wondered why she hadn't given it to me while she was alive. What could she have needed to say that had to wait until she was gone? Part of me wanted to tear it open. Part of me, trained to trust Eleanor's judgment without question, hesitated. She'd kept this hidden for a reason. Perhaps the reason would reveal itself when the time was right. I set the envelope aside and continued rifling through the box. At the very bottom I found a scrap of paper, a grocery receipt, the back of it scrawled with a shaky note dated a week before Eleanor went into the hospital for the last time. The handwriting wavered, but the message was stark. Samuel knows things. Trust him when you need to. Samuel Hayes, our family attorney for 30 years, one of Eleanor's closest friends. What had she told him that she hadn't told me? My phone split the silence. Andrew's name lit the screen. I answered cautiously. Hello? Hey, Dad. His voice had changed, warmer, almost friendly. The shift was so sudden it made me drop the phone for a heartbeat. Listen, I'm sorry about the other day. Things have been crazy with the wedding. Lydia and I were wondering if we could come see you soon. She wants to talk about something important. What does she want to talk about? I asked. Oh, just a small favor. Nothing major. She thought it'd be easier in person. Those words landed like stones. In 40 years Eleanor had taught me one rule. When someone asks for a small favor, they're usually planning to take everything. I said, I'll think about it, and ended the call before Andrew could press. The forced warmth in his voice hung in my ear like a siren. Yesterday I hadn't mattered enough to be invited. Today I was suddenly worth a visit. People only reach out when they want something. The arithmetic of betrayal is simple. I slept that night in the bed Eleanor and I had shared during those summers, her scent long gone from the pillows, but her presence still watching over me. I kept the sealed envelope on the nightstand, not ready to open it but unwilling to let it out of sight. The next morning, while making coffee, the phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Something told me to answer. Dad? The voice was Lydia's, sweet, manufactured honey. It was the first time she'd ever called me directly in 3 years. Andrew gave me your number. We were thinking, since you have that beautiful lake house sitting empty, it would be perfect for our second honeymoon. A little getaway, just the two of us. You're not using it anyway, right? The audacity stole my breath. Not using it. As if 40 years of memories were an inconvenience. As if Eleanor's death had turned our sanctuary into vacant property waiting for new owners. You want to use the lake house? I repeated slowly. Just for a few weeks. Maybe a month. We could modernize a few things, new curtains, kitchen updates. We'd be doing you a favor. I closed my eyes and saw Andrew, 5 years old, running along the dock with a fishing pole twice his size. I saw Eleanor dancing in the kitchen, a flower on her nose. I saw 40 years of love and labor being offered up with a single phone call. I'm sorry, Lydia, I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. The lake house is only for important people. Silence, magnificent, filled the line. Excuse me? She said, then forced outrage. You heard me. I hung up before she could begin. Within an hour the missed calls stacked up, 47 in total. The first voicemails were confused, sweet, playing innocent. Dad, I think we got disconnected. Call me back. Then the tone shifted. Raymond, that was incredibly rude. Andrew is very upset. Soon the mask had slipped entirely. The messages turned sharp. You're making a huge mistake. We were trying to help you. You'll regret this. I turned off my phone and let the lake house's silence settle around me like a protective shawl. My hands shook, but not from fear. Something else rose in me, something hard and bright. Dignity. For 2 years I'd moved through life like a ghost, apologizing for existing and accepting whatever scraps my son tossed me. But Eleanor hadn't raised a doormat. She raised a partner, an equal, a man worth loving. Grief had made me forget that. Now I remembered. I picked up the sealed envelope on the nightstand. The time had come. I opened it carefully, easing the paper as if preserving the touch of her fingers. Inside lay a single sheet. Eleanor's handwriting trembled but was unmistakable, every word deliberate. My dearest Raymond, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and something has gone wrong. I need to warn you about Lydia. She asked me about the lake house 3 times in my final months. Who owns it, what it's worth, what happens when you die. She pretended to fluff my pillows while asking about property values. Be careful, my love. She is not who Andrew thinks she is. Please don't let our son be used as a weapon against you. You are stronger than you know. Stand tall for me. Forever yours, Eleanor. I read it 3 times. Each pass carved the warning deeper into me. Even as cancer ate at her, Eleanor had been watching, protecting, preparing. She had known this day might come. She had left me this lighthouse, a small fierce map through the dark. My hands trembled, but now it was with something I hadn't felt in years, warm, fierce purpose. Eleanor had seen the danger from beyond the grave. Now it was my turn to stand as she had asked. Before I could move, a text buzzed across the screen from Samuel Hayes. Raymond, we need to talk urgently. Someone has been filing paperwork with your signature. I've compared the documents. The signature isn't yours. Eleanor's letter crumpled lightly in my other hand. The game Lydia was playing was bigger than I'd imagined. This was no longer about a vacation house or family quarrel. Someone was forging my signature on legal papers. I drove back to the city that night, Eleanor's words folded close to my heart. Samuel's text had changed everything. What I thought was a petty betrayal had become a dangerous, carefully planned assault, and I was only beginning to understand how deep it ran. Samuel Hayes had been our attorney for 30 years, a friend since college who practiced law with old-fashioned integrity. If anyone could untangle this, if anyone could find out who'd filed false documents, and why, it would be him. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and drove into the dark, ready to find the truth. When I called Samuel from the road, even through the faint static I heard something in his voice I had rarely heard before, urgency sharpened into fear. Come to my office first thing tomorrow morning, he said. Bring every document you have. And Raymond, don't talk to Andrew or Lydia until we speak. I knew then whatever he'd uncovered wasn't just serious, it was dangerous. I reached his office before the receptionist had finished her first coffee. Samuel was already there, standing behind a desk buried under papers I didn't recognize. He looked older, his face carved with the weight of something he wished he hadn't discovered. Sit down, Raymond. He gestured to the chair across from him. What I'm about to show you will make you furious. I need you calm, and I need you to listen before reacting. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were probate court filings. The header made my blood run cold. Petition for determination of incapacity and appointment of guardian. Someone filed this 3 weeks ago, Samuel said, his voice low. It claims you're showing progressive dementia. That you're unable to manage your finances. That you're a risk to yourself and your assets. My hand shook as I turned the pages, though with every new lie, something inside me hardened. A witness statement from someone named Patricia Brennan, claiming she'd seen me confused and disoriented. I had never seen that name in my life. Dates, incidents, fabricated with chilling detail. And then, my signature. Clean. Official. Except it wasn't mine. I didn't sign these, I said quietly. I know. Samuel pulled out a magnifying glass and a sheet with my real signature. The forgery is good, but not perfect. Your T's crossed differently. Your R's curve, not hook. Whoever did this studied your handwriting, but they missed the subtle things. One name rose in my throat like poison. Lydia. Most likely, Samuel agreed. The petition lists Andrew Gray as your proposed guardian. Lydia as co-guardian. If this succeeds, they control everything, your finances, your home, your medical decisions. I thought of the lake house. Eleanor's rose garden. Our life built over 40 years. Memories, work, love, reduced to assets on a page someone else wanted to take. There's more, Samuel said, voice lowering. Eleanor came to see me 6 months before she passed. She was worried, something involving Lydia. She asked me not to tell you at the time. Said you weren't ready? That the truth would hurt too much while she was alive. My chest tightened. What did she tell you? Not everything. She was still gathering pieces. But she asked me to watch over you after she was gone. To look for certain signs. He paused, letting the weight of it settle. She knew this was coming, Raymond. Maybe not the exact form, but she knew Lydia would eventually make a move. Before I could speak, a knock interrupted us. Samuel's secretary poked her head in. Mr. Hayes, a woman is here to see Mr. Clark. Says it's urgent. A Mrs. Holloway. Maggie. She rushed in, pale, anxious, clutching her purse. My neighbor of 15 years. A widow. Someone who understood grief in its loneliest form. Raymond, thank God. She sank into a chair, breath trembling. I called your house, no answer, so I came here. What is it, Maggie? It didn't seem important at the time, she said. But after what you told me about Andrew's wedding, things started to click. Samuel and I leaned forward. Last week, she continued, I was at the pharmacy. Lydia was there in the consultation room. I wouldn't have noticed, but I heard her say your name. My stomach tightened. What did she say? She was asking which medications cause confusion or memory problems in elderly patients. Told the pharmacist her father-in-law was having issues. Samuel went rigid. Maggie swallowed hard. But Raymond, you're not on anything like that. You barely take vitamins. The room went silent, heavy, suffocating. This wasn't just greed. This wasn't a hungry daughter-in-law sniffing around assets. This was a plan. Forged documents. Fake witnesses. Medical manipulation. A manufactured decline. A systematic erasure of my autonomy, all disguised as natural aging. Raymond, Samuel said grimly, this isn't amateur hour. If we don't act, she could have you declared incompetent within 60 days. I looked at Eleanor's letter in my hand, her handwriting, her warning, her love. You are stronger than you know. Stand tall for me. Then we wouldn't bow. We wouldn't break. Then we don't let her. I said. We fight. Samuel nodded with something like respect. Good. Because I have a plan. You're not going to like it. I braced myself. You need a full psychiatric evaluation before Lydia's petition is filed. If you establish competence first, her claims collapse. The law favors the first clean paper trail. Humiliating, but necessary. I know a neuropsychologist, Samuel continued. Dr. Patricia Webb. Highly respected. Courts trust her. And she despises elder exploitation. The appointment was set for the next morning. That night I barely slept. Part of me resented it all, the tests, the humiliation, the need to prove my own sanity. I had run a successful accounting firm for 40 years. Balanced complex ledgers effortlessly. Remembered the nuances of client accounts from decades ago. The idea that anyone could call me incompetent was absurd. But people like Lydia didn't deal in truth. They dealt in evidence, even fabricated. Dr. Webb's office was clinical but warm. Diplomas lining the walls, soft artwork calming anxious patients. She greeted me with a firm handshake, sharp eyes noting everything about me from the moment I walked in. Mr. Clark, she said, this isn't a test you pass or fail. It's simply an assessment of your brain's current function. I appreciated the honesty. For 90 minutes we worked through memory lists, geometric drawings, reasoning puzzles, logical explanations. Some were simple. Others unexpectedly challenging. But I approached each with the same methodical precision that had defined my career. When we finished, Dr. Webb set down her pen. Mr. Clark, she said, with something close to admiration, I'll prepare the full report in 48 hours. But I can tell you now, Your cognitive functioning is exceptional. Your recall is above average for any age group. Your reasoning is sharp. Your executive function is completely intact. She smiled. Frankly, you're sharper than most people half your age. Whoever suggested otherwise either doesn't know you, or has ulterior motives. I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Thank you, doctor. Don't thank me. Thank your brain, she said lightly. Keep doing whatever you've been doing. Samuel filed the evaluation that same afternoon, establishing proof of my mental competence before Lydia could strike. The first solid victory in a war I hadn't asked for, but was now fully prepared to win. We were building our fortress one document at a time, stacking each legal safeguard like stone against an oncoming storm. That evening, I returned to Eleanor's letter, reading it with eyes sharpened by everything I now knew. And then, there it was. A line near the bottom, overlooked before, glowing now with a terrible and magnificent clarity. Samuel knows things I couldn't tell you while I was alive. When the time is right, he'll show you. A chill crawled up my spine. Eleanor had left me more than love, she had left me warnings. I called Samuel immediately. The letter mentions you, I said. She wrote that you know things she couldn't tell me. A long pause stretched between us. I was wondering when you'd ask, he said quietly. But not on the phone. Come to my office tomorrow. There are documents you need to see. The truth Eleanor prepared for me. The next morning, Samuel placed a thick folder in front of me, labeled Eleanor Clark, Estate Confidential. My heartbeat stumbled. Inside were papers I had never seen, documents drawn up in the final months of Eleanor's life, created when she had been fighting cancer with diminishing strength but unwavering clarity. Eleanor came to me 6 months before she died, Samuel said. She was worried, Raymond. She noticed things about Lydia. Questions too pointed. Interest in your finances that felt predatory. He tapped the first document. This is an updated deed to Lake House. Eleanor transferred her half into an irrevocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary and trustee. No one can touch it. Not Andrew. Not Lydia. Only you. My eyes blurred with tears. Not sorrow, something deeper. Eleanor had been dying, and still she had been fighting for me. Protecting me. Shielding me from dangers I hadn't yet seen. She knew, I whispered. She suspected, Samuel replied. She hoped she was wrong. But she didn't want to take chances. His voice softened, almost reverent. She loved you, Raymond. This, he gestured to the documents, was her way of continuing to love you after she was gone. I covered my face with my hands. For the first time in 2 years I wept. Not from grief, but from gratitude, from the overwhelming realization of how fiercely Eleanor had protected me even in the shadow of death. When the storm inside me finally calmed, Samuel leaned forward, intensity returning to his eyes. There's more Eleanor left behind, he said. But she made me swear not to reveal it until things were worse. We're not there yet. For now, our priority is gathering evidence of what Lydia is actually doing. I understood instantly. You want me to invite her to Lake House? Samuel nodded. She'll think she's winning. She'll let her guard down. And when she does... He tapped the desk. We will be ready. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind. You are stronger than you know. I'll make the call, I said. The performance of my life. Calling Andrew felt like swallowing broken glass. Tell Lydia she can come to the Lake House, I said, forcing my voice to sound defeated, worn down, a man who had surrendered his last bit of strength. Maybe we can work something out. Silence. Then Andrew spoke, confusion braided with relief. Really, Dad? You mean it? I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe I've been too stubborn. A lie, yet not really a lie. I wasn't deceiving my son. I was protecting him from the woman who had turned him into someone I barely recognized. That's great, Dad. I'll tell Lydia right away. He hung up without saying he loved me. The absence hit harder than I expected. 7 minutes later, Lydia's name lit up my phone. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Dad! Her voice dripped with triumph she could barely restrain. Andrew told me the wonderful news. I knew you'd come around eventually. Families should stick together. I suppose you're right, I murmured. She rambled, her greed bleeding through every sentence as she described renovations, furniture replacements, walls she planned to tear down, as though the lake house already belonged to her. Then she said something that made my blood still. Mother always said property is the only thing that matters. Everything else is sentiment. Mother. Not her mother. Just mother. Spoken like scripture. I filed it away, silent. Can you come this Saturday? I asked. Perfect, she said. I'll come alone. Just to talk. Just to talk. The most dangerous promise in the world. The trap. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Samuel connected me with a security specialist who understood without explanation. Together we installed motion-activated cameras across the lake house, so small they were practically invisible. One inside a smoke detector. One hidden within a picture frame facing the living room. Another concealed in the cabin-shaped clock Eleanor had bought on our honeymoon. Every angle covered. Every word to be captured. Samuel ensured the footage streamed directly to a secure server at his firm. We're in a one-party consent state, he said. As long as you're present, everything Lydia says is admissible. Then he delivered the final piece of strategy. She needs to think she's already won. Only then will she show her true self. I nodded. Saturday was coming. And with it, the moment Lydia would finally expose who she really was. She's one of those people, Samuel had warned me. The kind who reveal their true selves the moment they think they're in control. Let her talk. Let her brag. Let her show you exactly who she is. I tested each hidden camera myself, walking through the cabin with my laptop open, checking every feed. The images were crisp, too crisp, capturing every corner of the home Eleanor and I had built together. Watching the empty rooms felt strange, like staring at a stage before the actors step into their roles. Soon, the performance would begin. Friday evening. I sat on the porch, watching the lake turn to molten gold under the sinking sun. The water was completely still, a flawless mirror. Eleanor and I used to sit here holding hands, watching the day fold into night. I could almost feel her beside me, her silent strength steadying my nerves. My phone buzzed. Maggie. Be careful, Ray. A woman was parked outside your house yesterday. Older, well-dressed. She was watching your windows. She drove off when I approached. I read the message 3 times. Older. Well-dressed. Watching the house. Not Lydia, she didn't hide. Someone else. Mother always said property is the only thing that matters. Lydia's words echoed back with a disturbing new weight. What kind of mother teaches her daughter that manipulation, forgery, and exploiting the elderly aren't crimes, they're strategies? I texted Maggie. Did you see the car? She replied instantly, silver Mercedes. New model. She looked like money, Ray. The expensive kind. Lydia drove a white SUV. The woman in the Mercedes was someone else entirely. Someone above Lydia. Someone with power. The cameras inside blinked steadily, green lights glowing against empty rooms and drifting dust. Everything was ready. Lydia had agreed to come alone. But I was beginning to understand. She wasn't working alone. Saturday, 11 a.m. A sleek black sedan pulled up the gravel drive. Not the white SUV from the wedding photos. This car was newer, colder, showing off its owner's ambition before she even stepped out. I watched through the window as Lydia checked her reflection in the side mirror, smoothed her hair, and walked toward the cabin like someone arriving to collect a prize she already considered hers. She didn't knock. She pushed the door open and strolled inside. Dad! She spread her arms in a performance of warmth. This place is even more charming than I remembered. Rustic. Quaint. Her eyes swept the room, not with appreciation but with calculation. A real estate appraiser disguised as a daughter-in-law. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention Eleanor. Didn't acknowledge that this was her first time entering a house filled with 40 years of memories. The same memories she had casually erased by excluding Eleanor from her own son's wedding. None of that mattered to her. Only the property mattered. "Can I get you something to drink?" I asked. "Water's fine, if you have it," she said, already wandering through the living room, running her fingers across the furniture, typing notes into her phone. "This couch needs to go. And these curtains, Dad, honestly, when was the last time this place was updated? The 80s? Eleanor had sewn those curtains by hand on our 5th anniversary trip. She picked the fabric because it matched the wildflowers along the lakeshore in spring. But I said nothing. Lydia drifted into the kitchen, opening cabinets with the entitlement of a new homeowner. "These appliances are ancient. We'll have to gut the whole thing. Maybe knock out this wall. Buyers love open concepts." "Buyers?" I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize you were thinking of selling." "Not immediately," she said lightly, crossing her legs with polished elegance. "But let's be realistic, Dad. You're not getting younger. This place is a lot to maintain. If you sign it over now, Andrew and I can handle everything. It would be easier for you. A favor." A favor. For the first time I saw the predator beneath her polish, sharp, patient, hungry. "Andrew agrees with me," she continued. "He thinks you should transfer the title now. Why deal with probate later?" I let silence stretch. She read my calmness as surrender. My stillness as weakness. People like Lydia didn't understand quiet strength. "Why do you want this place so badly?" I asked softly. She laughed, short, metallic, echoing off the walls Eleanor and I had painted together. "Because it's worth something, Dad. Unlike sitting here rotting with your memories. Sentimental junk means nothing. Property has value. Nostalgia doesn't. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." My phone vibrated silently. "Samuel. Getting everything. This is gold." Before I could respond, Lydia's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and something changed in her face. A softness I had never seen. She walked toward the window, her voice shifting into something almost childlike. "Hi, Mother. Yes, I'm here now. He's being cooperative. Don't worry. By next month this will all be ours." "Yes. I'll handle it. I always do." Mother. The real puppeteer. The woman in the silver Mercedes. The architect behind the forged papers and fabricated witnesses. Lydia hung up and returned with her mask secured. "Sorry, family stuff." I didn't react. But inside, the pieces locked together with icy clarity. Then she stepped into the kitchen to take another call, assuming I was too old to hear. She was wrong. I slipped out the side door to the porch. The kitchen window was cracked just enough for the breeze, and her voice, to spill out. This time she wasn't pretending. "Mother, he's old and alone. There's no one to protect him. Yes, I filed the incompetency paperwork. The witness statement is in. Andrew doesn't suspect anything, he believes whatever I tell him." I froze, heart hammering against the wooden wall. "I'm trying to get him to sign something, transfer, power of attorney, anything. He's more stubborn than I expected. But he'll break eventually. They always do." Then came the sentence that cut like a blade. "I remember, Mother. You taught me well. When Grandma signed over her house. You waited until she was scared and confused. And at that moment I understood. This wasn't a daughter being greedy. It wasn't a family dispute. It was a generational predator family, passing down manipulation like heirlooms. And I was their next target." "Then you handed her the pen." She didn't even understand what she was giving away. My blood froze. "If he won't cooperate," Lydia continued, her voice sharp and efficient, "we proceed with the incompetency filing. The forged evaluation is solid. And that fake witness statement? It'll hold. Old people sign anything when they're scared and confused. You always said that." A pause. Then her voice dropped into a chilling whisper. Don't worry. When I'm finished, Raymond Clark won't have a penny left. The lake house, his savings, everything. Andrew will inherit it all eventually. And once he does, it becomes ours. Mine and yours. Just like we planned. I closed my eyes as the horror washed over me. This wasn't greed. This wasn't impulsive cruelty. This was a system, a family craft passed from mother to daughter. Margaret Carter had manipulated her own elderly mother. Taken her home. Stripped her life away while she trembled, confused, afraid. And she had taught Lydia every move. For one strange moment, I felt pity. Lydia had been raised by a predator, sculpted to believe that affection was transactional and that old people were assets waiting to be harvested. She'd never been taught kindness. Never shown unconditional love. Her moral compass had been broken before she ever grew old enough to hold it. But pity wasn't an excuse. She was an adult. She had a choice. And she chose her mother's path. She chose to become a predator. And now she was coming for everything Eleanor and I had built. The crunch of tires on gravel snapped us both still. A car. Not the black sedan outside. Not the Mercedes. Through the trees, I saw a familiar silver shape pulling into the driveway. Andrew's car. The same one he'd had since college. He wasn't supposed to be here. Lydia had insisted she'd come alone. I stepped around the cabin just as Andrew climbed out. His face was pale, uncertain, haunted by something I couldn't read. Dad? Lydia? He said, looking between us. I came early. I needed to see you both. I needed to. He stopped mid-sentence, staring at his wife. Lydia's mask of sweetness snapped into place. But not fast enough. For one raw second, her expression slipped. Irritation, calculation, the cold flicker of a hunter whose trap had been sprung too early. And Andrew saw it. I watched the recognition hit him like a stone. A single crack across the armor she had built around him. Honey, Lydia said sweetly, too sweetly, I told you I wanted to handle this alone. You didn't need to come. I know, he murmured, but his voice was distant. But something felt wrong. I couldn't stop thinking about it. He turned to me fully, searching my face. Dad, are you okay? For the first time in years, I saw something in my son's eyes. Doubt. The first opening. The first shift in the tide. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth had already begun to seep through the cracks. We stood in a strained triangle of silence. Lydia recovered first. Her smile locked back into place like a blade. Andrew, perfect timing. Your father and I were just discussing the lake house. He's being so generous about letting us use it. Aren't you, Dad? She reached for him. He stepped away. What's going on here? He asked quietly. I looked at my son, at the fear, the confusion, and the fragile crack in the loyalty Lydia had forced on him. This moment. This was what Samuel and I had prepared for. Andrew, I said softly, sit down. There's something you need to hear. Lydia laughed too fast, too loudly. Raymond, don't be dramatic. We were having a perfectly nice. Sit down, Andrew. There was something in my tone that stopped them both. Andrew obeyed. He sat facing Eleanor's clock. He didn't know about the camera hidden inside. He didn't know every word had already been recorded, streamed, and archived by Samuel. He only knew his father finally sounded like a man who refused to be dismissed. I took up my phone, opened Samuel's file, and pressed play. Lydia's voice filled the room, inescapable, undeniable. Honestly, Dad, I don't know why you're so attached to this place. It's not like you have that many years left to enjoy it. Andrew's face drained. Because it's worth something. Unlike sitting here rotting with your memories. He flinched as if struck. Then the call with Margaret played. Mother, he's old and alone. Yes, I planted the incompetency paperwork. No, Andrew doesn't suspect anything. He's too in love with me to question what I tell him. Andrew's knuckles turned white as he gripped the chair. Lydia stood motionless, her face tightening into something feral. And then the final damning piece. Old people sign things when they're scared and confused. You taught me well, Mother. Just like when Grandma gave up her house. Silence crashed over us. I stopped the recording and looked directly at Andrew. His expression shifted through shock, pain, shame, and something else. Recognition. He didn't look as shocked as he should. The truth hit me like a punch. You knew, I whispered. Andrew stared at the floor. You knew, didn't you? His shoulders shook. When he finally looked up, tears streaked down his face. I knew she wanted the lake house, he said hoarsely. I knew she talked to her mother about assets. Inheritance. Control. I saw emails. Heard conversations. A pause. A breaking. But I thought, if I gave her what she wanted, she'd finally love me. His voice cracked. I thought I could manage it. Keep it from going too far. I told myself you'd be fine. That she wouldn't actually hurt you. And so you chose her approval. I said quietly. Over my dignity. He nodded once, shattered. I was a coward, Dad. I'm so sorry. I had prepared myself for Lydia's cruelty. I had armored myself against her greed. But Andrew's confession, that he had known and stayed silent, cut deeper than any fraud she could have committed. He had betrayed me to keep her love. Lydia's face drained of color. She watched father and son collapse in front of her. Then, just like that, she recalculated. Andrew, she said gently, stepping forward, voice dripping manipulation. You're confused. Your father is not well. He's turning you against me. He needs help, professional help. Stop. Andrew's voice was sharp. Unfamiliar. Honey, listen to me. Stop. He shouted, springing to his feet. I heard you. I heard everything. You were going to destroy him. And you wanted me to help. Lydia's mask shattered completely. Contempt twisted her face. You'll regret this, she snarled. My mother will make sure of it. Neither of you know what you're dealing with. She stormed out, slamming the door. But she didn't leave. Through the window, I watched her pacing, phone to her ear, frantically gesturing. Calling reinforcements. Calling her mother. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. 20 minutes later, Samuel's car barreled down the driveway. I had called him the second Lydia left. He arrived with a leather briefcase, jaw tight, eyes sharp. Where is she? He asked. Outside, I said, nodding toward the window. On the phone with her mother. Samuel set his briefcase on the table. Good, he said. Let them plan. He looked at me, deadly calm. Because now, we're ready for the mother. He nodded, unsurprised. Good. Let her panic. It'll make the next part easier. Andrew sat slumped in the corner chair, his face buried in his hands. He hadn't spoken since Lydia stormed out. I couldn't tell whether he was grieving his marriage, his own guilt, or both. Samuel opened his briefcase on the kitchen table and began laying out folders with the precision of a surgeon. I've spent the last 48 hours building our case, he said. What we have is more than enough to destroy her. He spread the documents out like battle plans. The first folder held the fraudulent incompetency petition, the one with my forged signature. Samuel had highlighted it in yellow. Beside it was a report from a handwriting expert outlining 17 clear discrepancies between the forgery and my genuine signature. The forgery alone is enough to trigger a criminal investigation, Samuel explained. But we're not done. The second folder contained digital forensics. A specialist had traced the forged documents to a single computer, Lydia Carter Gray's, complete with timestamps showing when each file was created and edited. She was careless, Samuel said. She thought she was dealing with a helpless old man. She left fingerprints everywhere. The third folder held transcripts, every recording from the lake house, every word Lydia had spoken, including her phone calls with her mother. Samuel had already sent copies to the county prosecutor. "The charges she's facing are serious," he said. "Elder financial abuse is a felony here. Combined with fraud, forgery, conspiracy, she's looking at real prison time. Even if she avoids the worst, her life as she knows it is over." The side door opened. Lydia stepped back inside. She had recomposed herself, mask firmly in place, but something desperate flickered beneath the surface. She froze when she saw the table covered in evidence. "What is all this?" Samuel turned to her with the controlled calm of a man who'd dismantled hundreds like her in court. "This, Mrs. Gray, is the end of your scheme. We have the forged signatures traced to your computer. We have your recorded confession. We have evidence of your mother's involvement, and her history of doing the exact same thing to her own family. The prosecutor has already opened a file." Lydia's face flickered through denial, anger, and then wounded innocence. "This is all a misunderstanding," she whispered. "My mother pressured me. She's controlled me my whole life. I'm a victim too." Samuel's voice was ice. "Victims don't forge documents. Victims don't file fraudulent petitions. Victims don't scheme to steal property from elderly men while laughing about how easy it will be." He snapped the folder shut. "You made choices. And now you'll face the consequences." Lydia turned to Andrew, searching for her usual puppet. "Honey, please. You know me. I'd never." Andrew stood, his voice hoarse but steady. "I want to file for separation. Immediately." Lydia's mask shattered. "You can't be serious. I should have done it years ago." He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in years, I saw clarity in his eyes. "Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." I nodded. I couldn't trust my voice. The wound of his betrayal was still raw, but beneath it, something small and fragile began to grow. Hope. Lydia stared at the wreckage of her empire. Then her phone rang. She saw her mother's name, and her face hardened. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You think you've won? You have no idea what my mother is capable of." She answered the call while walking out the door, voice low and urgent. I caught fragments. "They have everything, yes, everything. I don't know how." Samuel watched her go, expression grim. "She's either going to run or do something desperate. People like her don't surrender, they escalate." I thought of the silver Mercedes watching from the shadows. I thought of Margaret Carter, who had robbed her own mother. I thought of the generational pattern of predators. "I'm counting on it," I said. The next morning, the video appeared online. Maggie called within minutes, furious. I made the mistake of watching it. Lydia sat in a softly lit living room, no makeup, eyes red, carefully curated vulnerability. Her voice broke in all the right places. "I never wanted any of this to be public," she said. "But I have to tell my side before my father-in-law's lies destroy my reputation." She claimed I was suffering from dementia. She claimed Andrew had been manipulated by my delusions. She framed herself as a devoted daughter-in-law caring for a sick, paranoid old man. 12 minutes of lies. And the comments? "Poor thing. My grandpa had dementia too, they get mean like that. She looks genuinely hurt. She's obviously telling the truth." Each one was a small blade in my chest. Samuel found me staring at the phone, hollow. He turned the device face down. "Stop reading that garbage. They believe her," I said. "All of them. Of course they do. She's young, pretty, crying. The internet loves a pretty victim." He leaned forward. "But here's what you need to understand, let her climb higher. The higher she climbs on lies, the harder she'll fall." He tapped the phone. "That video? It's evidence. She accused you of dementia publicly. We have a certified evaluation proving the opposite. She claimed victimhood. We have recordings proving her guilt. She just strengthened our case." A knock came at the door. I opened it. Emily Holloway stood on the porch, Maggie's 17-year-old granddaughter, angry, determined and unafraid. "Mr. Clark," she said without even saying hello, "I saw that video." "It's disgusting," Emily said, anger tightening her voice. "She's lying about everything, and people are believing her." "I know, Emily. But you have the recording, right? The one where she admits what she did." She was already pulling out her phone, thinking several steps ahead. "Can I share it? I can make it go viral. I'll edit together the key parts, add context, make sure people understand what really happened." I hesitated. The idea of fighting this battle publicly made my stomach twist. I was a private man, one who had spent his entire life avoiding drama and spectacle. But Lydia had dragged me into a public arena, dragged my name through the mud in front of thousands of strangers. She wanted a public war. Perhaps it was time I stopped hiding from the battlefield she chose. I looked to Samuel. He shrugged. "It's your call. The recordings were legally obtained. Nothing stops you from sharing them." I turned back to Emily. "Do it." She worked with astonishing speed. Within 2 hours, she had edited together the most damning moments of Lydia's confession, time-stamped, clearly contextualized. Emily narrated over the footage in a calm, measured voice, explaining who I was, what Lydia had done, and what the evidence proved. She ended the video with Dr. Webb's official psychiatric evaluation confirming I was mentally competent. She posted it to the same platforms where Lydia's lie-filled performance had spread. The response was immediate and brutal. "Oh my God, she's evil. This is elder abuse. She tried to declare him incompetent? Cancel her. Now." Within hours, Lydia's calculated performance was being played side by side with Emily's compilation, exposing her like sunlight exposes mold. Her comment section transformed from sympathy to outrage. That evening, Samuel and I sat on my back porch, watching the sun sink into a horizon painted in bronze and gold. "She'll come back to the lake house," I said softly. "People like her can't resist trying one last time." Samuel nodded. "Then we'll be ready." The next morning, I was making coffee when I heard vehicles pull into my driveway. I checked the window. A news van. A reporter and a cameraman. And behind them, a silver Mercedes. The door opened, and a tall, elegant older woman stepped out. Impeccably dressed. Perfectly styled silver hair. An expression of cold, absolute certainty. Margaret Carter. She had arrived to salvage her daughter's collapsing empire, unaware that the final act was already written. Before I could react, my front door flew open. Margaret Carter marched inside without knocking, her heels striking the floor like a judge's gavel. The news crew stayed outside, cameras rolling. She dominated the room instantly, like a queen entering a throne hall. "Mr. Clark," she said sharply, "this has gone far enough. My daughter may have made mistakes, but you are destroying her life over a misunderstanding. Surely we can resolve this like civilized adults." I stayed seated in my armchair, refusing to be intimidated. "Mrs. Carter," I said calmly, "I wondered when you'd show your face." Her eyebrows twitched upward. "Excuse me? I've heard a great deal about you. Your daughter speaks of you often, especially when she assumes no one is listening." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit. We have much to discuss." She did not sit. She stood in the center of my living room like a general surveying enemy territory. "I don't know what lies Lydia has told you," she said, smoothing her tone into something meant to sound reasonable. "But she loves your son. She was simply trying to help your family plan for the future. If she was overzealous, it was out of care. Is that what you call it? Overzealous?" I leaned forward. "Is forging documents overzealous? Is trying to declare me incompetent overzealous? Or did she learn all that from you, just like you learned when you stole from your own mother?" Silence cracked across the room. For the first time, Margaret's mask slipped, just a flicker of shock, something dark and unguarded, before she forced her expression back to stone. "I have no idea what you're talking about." The back door opened. Samuel stepped in, carrying a folder I hadn't seen before. He had been waiting for this moment. "Mrs. Carter," he said. "I'm Samuel Hayes, Mr. Clark's attorney. You should look at these before you speak further." He laid documents across the coffee table. Property transfer records from 15 years earlier. A deed to a Connecticut house, signed over from one Dorothy Frances Carter to her daughter, Margaret Elizabeth Carter, just 3 weeks before Dorothy's death. A handwriting analysis showing the signature on that deed was shaky, inconsistent, nearly identical to the patterns in Lydia's forged documents. Samuel's voice was cold, factual, merciless. "Your mother owned a house worth nearly $400,000. She signed it over to you while suffering from late-stage Alzheimer's. The transfer went uncontested because the rest of your family was grieving, and because you convinced everyone she wanted you to have everything." Margaret went pale under her flawless makeup. "That was years ago. It's irrelevant. It has everything to do with this," Samuel snapped. "You created a pattern. You targeted vulnerable elderly relatives and took their assets under the guise of help. Then you taught your daughter to do the same." He closed the folder with a sharp, definitive thud. "The county prosecutor has been notified. An investigation, past and present, is underway." Margaret's confidence buckled. Her voice lost its steel. "You can't prove anything." "We don't have to," Samuel said. "Prosecutors will. And when they investigate your financial history, they will find more than just your mother's house. People like you do not stop at one victim." Movement near the doorway caught my eye. Lydia. She had slipped inside at some point, hoping to back her mother. But she froze now, expression hollow. "Mother," she whispered. "Is it true? What they're saying about grandmother?" Margaret snapped. "Lydia, not now. You told me she wanted you to have the house," Lydia said, voice trembling. "You told me she loved you most. You said what we were doing to Raymond was just smart planning. You—" "Lydia, be quiet. Did you lie to me?" Her voice cracked. "Did you lie about everything?" Margaret's silence was an answer neither of us needed spoken aloud. I watched Lydia's face as her world collapsed, realizing that the woman she idolized, the mother she trusted, was nothing more than a predator who had raised a second-generation predator. Samuel cleared his throat. "Mrs. Carter. Mrs. Gray. I suggest you leave. The restraining order paperwork is already being filed. You'll both be served before the end of the day." Margaret gathered what remained of her shattered dignity and walked toward the door, her heels no longer clicking with authority, but shuffling in defeat. Lydia followed. Before stepping out, she looked back at me one last time, her expression unreadable, caught somewhere between grief, hatred, and the first spark of understanding. The restraining order was filed that afternoon. Lydia and Margaret were both barred from coming within 500 feet of me or Lake House. The judge's words had been sharp as steel. "Any violation will result in immediate arrest." That night, I drove back to Lake House alone. I needed Eleanor. Or rather, I needed the quiet she left behind, the rooms she loved, the memories she painted into the walls, the life we had built one ordinary day at a time. The stars shimmered on the lake like scattered silver, refusing to let darkness swallow them whole. My phone buzzed. A security alert. Someone had tripped the front door motion sensor. I opened the app, expecting a raccoon or stray dog. Instead, my breath froze in my chest. Lydia. Moonlight lit her face like a ghost at my threshold. She was breaking in. But I was not at home watching the alert. I was already inside Lake House. Sitting in the dark, waiting. The same chair where Lydia had shown me her true nature. The same chair where she had whispered to her mother that soon everything would be theirs. The same chair where Eleanor used to rest her head on my shoulder. Samuel had asked earlier, "Are you sure she'll come?" I had answered without hesitation. People like Lydia don't accept defeat. They come back for one last try. The restraining order wasn't a warning to her, it was a challenge. The cameras caught her car creeping down the driveway, headlights off. She parked behind the pines, unaware I had installed new units after her last visit. Every angle was covered now. She approached the cabin on foot, her movements sharp with desperation. She tried the front door. Locked. Then she moved to the older windows on the side. A brittle crack echoed through the house as she smashed the pane. I watched on my phone as she reached through the broken glass, unlatched the frame, and slipped inside. She didn't turn on the lights. Her phone flashlight swayed across the walls Eleanor and I had painted decades ago, throwing frantic shapes that chased her through the rooms. She tore into the filing cabinet first, then the kitchen, then our bedroom, rifling through drawers, ripping open envelopes, scattering every memory she touched. A storm in human form. Finally, she spotted the antique desk Eleanor had inherited from her grandmother. She tore open the drawer and found the folder labeled Lake House Property Documents. Her breath hitched. A squeal of triumph. That was when I turned on the lamp. Light exploded into the room. Lydia screamed. A raw, animal sound. And the folder fell from her hands, papers fluttering to the floor like panicked birds. "Hello, Lydia," I said. She backed against the desk, trembling, her face drained of color. How did you were supposed to be at home. You were supposed to watch helplessly while I destroyed evidence? Stole documents? I shook my head slowly. No. Your mother raised you to be predictable. I knew you'd come the moment the restraining order was issued. You set me up, she choked. I gave you every chance to walk away. You chose to break into my home. You chose to violate a judge's order. You chose to steal what was never yours. I stood, feeling every year in my bones but none of the weakness. You made every decision, Lydia. I just made sure witnesses were watching. Outside, red and blue lights flashed against the cabin walls. The officers had arrived. She froze, horror spreading over her face like a stain. No, she whispered. No, no, no. The front door swung open. 2 officers entered, calm and assured, Samuel's preparations guiding every step. The live camera feed had been streaming to the sheriff's office from the moment Lydia's car appeared. They had everything. Breaking the window. Entering the house. Rummaging through my belongings. Everything. Lydia Carter Gray, the lead officer announced. You are under arrest for breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, and attempted theft. You have the right to remain silent. She didn't go quietly. She fought, screamed, hurled accusations like knives. You planned this. You're not a victim, you're the monster. You destroyed my life. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The officers pulled her outside and placed her in the back of the cruiser. The flashing lights washed the trees in alternating waves of red and blue. I stood on the porch until the car disappeared down the road. The night fell silent again. The trap had closed. And Lydia had walked straight into it. Samuel stepped beside me, holding a thick envelope sealed with care. Raymond, he said quietly, Eleanor told me to give you this when it was finally over. I think it's time. He placed it in my hands. My breath caught. 3 words were written on the front in Eleanor's delicate handwriting. My final gift. My hands shook. Her handwriting looked alive. As though she were sitting beside me, steadying my fingers. Samuel spoke softly. She came to me 6 months before she passed. Weak but sharp. She had a very specific request, one she insisted remained secret until tonight. Why? I whispered. She said you weren't ready? She said you needed to fight this battle on your own before you understood the truths she left behind. I sank into the chair by the window. The envelope trembled between my fingers. Samuel continued. Eleanor created an irrevocable trust for Lake House. It's ironclad. No one can sell, challenge, or transfer the property without your explicit consent, not even under a conservatorship. My breath stilled. There's more, Samuel said. If anyone ever tried to take the property through fraud or manipulation, the trust automatically transfers the house to a charitable foundation in her name, the Eleanor Clark Foundation for Elder Rights. He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. She wanted to ensure that anyone who tried to exploit you would get nothing. Their greed would fund the very cause they preyed upon. Eleanor, dying breath by painful breath, had been building armor around me. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were the documents Samuel had described. Pages of legal fortification crafted by the woman I had loved for over 40 years. Eleanor had been protecting me. Long after she left this world. Eleanor's trust documents were precise, airtight, unshakable, everything Lydia had needed them not to be. But beneath the stack of legal armor lay something far more fragile. A single sheet of cream-colored stationery. Her handwriting. Shakier than on the envelope, the tremor of her illness visible in every curve and stroke, but still unmistakably hers. Still Eleanor. I unfolded it with trembling hands. My dearest Raymond, I read aloud, my voice breaking on the first word. If you're reading this, then someone tried to take what we built together. But they failed, because I will always protect you, even when I'm no longer there to hold your hand. The lake house isn't just property. It's where we fell in love. Where we dreamed. Where I want your memories of me to live forever. No one can take that from you now. I knew you would be strong when the time came. I knew you would stand tall. That's why I fell in love with you all those years ago. Not because you were powerful, but because you were good. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for the life we shared. And when you sit on that porch watching the sunset, know that I am sitting beside you. Always. Stand tall, my love. I'm so proud of you. Forever yours. Eleanor. I couldn't continue. The words blurred, dissolving into a flood that broke free after 2 years of being damned behind pride and fear. Tears I had refused to shed because crying meant accepting she was truly gone. But now, holding this final message, feeling her love reach across the divide between life and death, the dam shattered. I wept. Not dignified, careful tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that curled my spine and emptied my lungs. Sobs for Eleanor. For the years stolen. For the future we were supposed to share. For the son I had lost to manipulation. For the man I had become, afraid, alone, uncertain whether I had anything left to fight for. Samuel rested a hand on my shoulder, gentle and brief, then stepped outside. He understood. Some grief must be witnessed from a distance. Some rooms become sacred for a time, and even friends must wait at the threshold. I don't know how long I cried. Minutes, hours, time dissolved in that small cabin thick with Eleanor's presence. Eventually, the sobs faded. And in their place, unexpectedly, came peace. Not emptiness. Not despair. Peace. Eleanor's true gift wasn't just protection. It was permission. Permission to grieve. To feel. To be human in a world that demanded I be strong. When I finally lifted my head, the first light of dawn was spilling through the windows. Golden beams danced through dust particles like tiny spirits swirling in the air. Eleanor's letter lay in my lap, her love etched permanently into my memory. Footsteps on the porch made me turn. Andrew stood in the doorway. Pale. Exhausted. Uncertain, like a child approaching a father he feared he no longer knew. He carried a leather-bound photo album from our old family room. "Dad," he whispered, "can we talk?" I gestured for him to come in. He moved cautiously, as though the cabin he'd visited hundreds of times as a boy had become a foreign country. Maybe it had. Maybe we both needed to relearn how to exist here. He sat across from me, the album resting on his knees. In the morning light, I saw how much he had aged in mere weeks. Dark circles, slumped shoulders, the weight of truth finally crushing the denial he had lived in. "I made this," he said. I couldn't sleep. So I went through the old photos. I put together a new album. Without her. He turned the pages. There we were. Years of memories I had forgotten. Andrew as a toddler on Eleanor's lap by the lake. The three of us in matching ridiculous Christmas sweaters Eleanor had knitted. His graduation day, Eleanor beaming, me holding back tears. College holidays, birthdays, Ordinary afternoons that had never seemed important. Now every image felt like a treasure. I want to remember who we were, Andrew said. Before I let her change me. Before I forgot what mattered. I studied my son's face, searching for the boy I had raised, the boy who once trusted me with every dream. He was still there, buried under years of manipulation and fear, struggling to breathe again. Why are you really here, Andrew? I asked softly. He closed the album and met my eyes. To apologize, he said. A real apology. Not the kind where you expect forgiveness. The kind where you admit everything, and accept that it might not be enough. He took a breath that trembled. I knew what Lydia was doing, he confessed. Maybe not everything, not the forged documents, not the fake witnesses, but I knew she wanted your money. And the lake house. He swallowed hard. I heard her talking to her mother. I saw emails she thought she deleted. And I told myself I could control it. That I could manage her. That I could keep her from going too far. His voice cracked. I chose my fear of being alone over your dignity. I let her exclude you from my wedding. I stayed silent while she tried to have you declared incompetent. Because I was terrified of losing her. He wiped his eyes. That was unforgivable. The words hung between us like a raw wound. I had waited weeks, years maybe, to hear them. When I spoke, my voice was steady. You broke my trust, Andrew. You broke your mother's memory. She loved you more than anything, and you let someone who cared about neither of us use her death as a tool. He winced, but didn't look away. I can't pretend that didn't happen. I paused. And I won't. I know, he whispered. Trust isn't given, I continued. It's built. Brick by brick. If you want to be part of this family again, you have to earn it. Not with apologies. Not with albums. With time. With choices. With showing up when it's hard and staying when it's easier to walk away. I understand, he said quietly. Do you? I asked. Because this isn't fixed today. Or next week. This is years of rebuilding, and there's no promise it'll ever be what it once was. I'm not asking for a promise, he said. Just a chance. Silence settled between us like soft dust. Morning light warmed the room. Eleanor's presence filled every empty space. Forgiveness was not forgetting. It was choosing to leave a door open. The chance is yours, I said at last. What you do with it is up to you. Andrew stood, then paused at the doorway. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, frayed, familiar. Lydia had these, he said. I found them while cleaning out the house. She was going to sell them. He handed it to me. I opened the box, and the breath was punched from my chest. Eleanor's pearl earrings. The ones she wore on our wedding day. The ones she promised would pass down through our family. Mom would have wanted you to keep them, Andrew whispered. I closed the box, pressing it to my heart. No, I said softly. Your mother would have wanted you to give them to someone worthy. Someday, when you find her, you will. A tear slid down his cheek. Dad, can I come home? Not today, I said gently. I know you haven't earned that yet. He nodded, accepting the truth. But someday? He asked. I looked at him for a long time, seeing both the man who betrayed me and the child who once held my hand on this very porch. The door is open, I said. Whether you walk through it, that's up to you. 3 months passed before I felt ready to breathe again, let alone celebrate anything. Lydia pleaded guilty in early October, accepting a deal that spared her the humiliation of a public trial, 18 months in state prison, along with mandatory restitution for the legal and emotional damage her scheme had caused. When the judge delivered the sentence, she stood there wearing that same expression she'd worn the day she first walked into my lake house, like she already owned everything in sight. But the confidence was gone. Her posture had collapsed inward, her eyes hollow, her presence small. She looked like a woman who had gambled everything on cruelty, and lost. I did not attend the sentencing. Samuel went in my place and called me afterward to relay the details. I listened quietly, and surprisingly, I felt none of the satisfaction I thought would come. Lydia would serve her time, and when she stepped out of those prison gates, she would enter a world that wanted nothing to do with her. Her reputation was ruined. Her marriage was over. Her plans had crumbled like a house built on sand. She would face a life of nothing. And that, I realized, was a punishment far greater than any cell. Margaret's reckoning came slower, but it cut far deeper. The investigation into her past uncovered what Samuel had suspected all along. Her mother wasn't the only victim. Over the last 3 decades, Margaret had manipulated at least 4 elderly relatives into signing over homes, accounts, land, always timing her plays to coincide with sickness, grief, or cognitive decline. Always covering her tracks just well enough. But at last, the scrutiny she had avoided all her life finally found her. Multiple charges were filed. Civil suits followed. Her carefully constructed image collapsed piece by piece as victim after victim came forward to tell their stories. The woman who taught her daughter to view elderly people as assets to be harvested was finally facing her own harvest. Andrew filed for divorce the week after Lydia's arrest. He moved into a small apartment across town, a modest place with second-hand furniture and blank walls. Nothing like the polished, empty life Lydia had promised him. He started therapy twice a week, then once a week as the wounds began to heal. He visited me every Sunday, bringing coffee and sitting on my porch while we talked, sometimes about meaningful things, sometimes about nothing at all. The conversations were awkward at first. Guarded. Weighted with years of distance, and the wreckage of what had happened. But slowly, week by week, we began to find our way back to each other. He wasn't the son I remembered. He was someone new, someone shaped by mistakes, regret, and the painful process of learning who he wanted to become. I didn't know if I would ever trust him the way I once had. But I had decided to give him the chance to earn it. And so far, he was trying. The gathering at the lake house was Maggie's idea. She insisted I had spent too much time alone with my thoughts, that the cabin needed life inside it again. I resisted, but Maggie was persistent in the way only a seasoned neighbor of 15 years could be. By the time I agreed, Emily had already planned the menu and Samuel had cleared his entire schedule. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon in late November. The trees were a deep gold. The lake reflected the sky like a mirror. Maggie brought her famous apple pie. Emily brought her energetic youthfulness and a playlist she promised wouldn't give me a headache. Samuel brought a bottle of wine Eleanor had loved, an act of kindness that tightened my throat. And Andrew brought himself, hesitant, hopeful, lingering at the edges like someone still learning he was allowed to belong. The cabin filled with laughter for the first time in years. We ate too much, talked too loudly, and told stories about Eleanor, stories that made us smile and cry in the same breath. Emily convinced me to dance to one of her songs, and I surprised everyone, including myself, by enjoying it. Samuel raised a toast. To Eleanor. To justice. To family, both chosen and inherited. Maggie held my hand during the quiet moments, reminding me that I was not alone. As the sun sank toward the mountains, I slipped away to the dock. The wooden planks creaked beneath my feet, familiar as breath. I stood at the edge where the water lapped against the posts and pulled Eleanor's letter from my pocket. I had read it dozens of times. I knew every curve of her handwriting. Every word etched itself deeper into me each time. But I read it again. Stand tall, my love. I'm so proud of you. I folded the letter with reverence and placed it back against my chest. The sunset painted the water golden pink, the same colors Eleanor had loved, the same colors that had witnessed our first kiss on this very dock 43 years ago. I thought about everything I had lost. My wife. My trust in my son. 2 years of peace stolen by people who saw my grief as an opportunity. And then I thought about what I had gained. Strength I didn't know I possessed. Friends who stood beside me when it mattered. A son who was slowly becoming the man his mother always believed he could be. I remembered Andrew's words from that first devastating phone call. We only invited important people. Behind me, laughter burst from the porch. I turned and saw them all, Maggie refilling glasses, Emily teasing Andrew, Samuel watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. The lake house had always been for important people. I smiled, truly smiled, filled with a peace I had fought hard to earn. This time, I whispered to the sunset, to Eleanor, to myself. I chose myself. And that made all the difference. And that is my story. A story of betrayal and resilience. A story about the people who try to break us, and the strength we discover when we refuse to be broken. For a long time, I believed kindness meant silence. That keeping the peace mattered more than protecting my dignity. But Eleanor taught me otherwise. Even from beyond the grave. Standing tall is not about anger or revenge. It is about knowing your worth. And refusing to let anyone diminish it. If you are listening today, maybe you know what it feels like to be underestimated because of your age. To be dismissed by the people who should have loved you most. To wonder if walking away makes you weak. I hope my story shows you this. Walking away from those who harm you is not surrender. It is the first step toward reclaiming your life. Family is not always blood. Sometimes it is the neighbor who checks in. The young person who believes in your fight. The friend who stands beside you in a courtroom. The lake house taught me something powerful. Home is wherever you are valued. If this story touched you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Tell me, have you ever had to stand up to someone who underestimated you? Where did you find your strength? Share your story below. Because your voice might be the one that helps someone else find the courage to stand tall. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. And thank you for believing that quiet strength can still win in a loud world. Until next time, remember Eleanor's words. You are stronger than you know.